Newscast, we told you about today's decision by the Alameda County District Attorney to charge a San Leandro police officer for shooting and killing Stephen Taylor at a Walmart this past April. It comes as the call for police reform gets louder every day. Now, one of the men leading that call is Cephas' uncle Bobby X. Johnson, his nephew Oscar Grant, shot and killed by a BART police officer in 2009. Cephas, thank you so much for your time. It's so nice to see you. I know it's still difficult more than 10 years later. And just to remind people of this case, Officer Johannes Meserly was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in your nephew's death. Your reaction to today's news that an officer has been charged in Stephen Taylor's killing?
Well, one, it's about time. I mean, since Oscar's murder in 2009, January 1st, there has not been an officer charged that I'm aware of in the state of California for an on-duty shooting of a person of color. So there's hard work that we done put in for years on top of years. The legislation that has came forth, like AB 71, use of force data collection, of course, AB 953, the Racial Identification Profiling Act, and I think most importantly, the last two, 1421, championed by or sponsored by Senator Nancy Skinner, and definitely AB 392, California Act to Save Lives, the most strictest use of force legislation in the nation. Talking about de-escalation tactics have to be used.
You've been very active this past decade, and you recently testified before the legislature for a bill to decertify police officers who are fired for misconduct, to make it harder for them to join another police department. It failed. Why do you believe it did fail, and why do you think this legislation is so critical?
I mean, decertification of police officers that conduct themselves in ways that are not conducive to the community relationship is extremely important. And so I feel the reason why this bill particularly failed this particular time is because the California Police Union, or the police unions here in the state of California, really felt that this bill would impact the way they handle their police officers that are charged for murder on their police force. And so we wanted to see police officers not be able to have the ability to leave Oakland and go to New York and be rehired after they've been involved in a shooting here, or vice versa. Officer in New York involved in a shooting, come to the state of California, get hired in Oakland, and then next thing you know, he's involved in another shooting. So it has become very important for us to figure out ways to make sure that this don't happen. And the decertification legislation that we put forth that failed was extremely important in that regard.
Small steps taken since the death of your nephew, since the killing of your nephew, and since the killing of George Floyd. Obviously, a strong movement now. What do you think needs to be done to break this cycle and rebuild the trust between police and their communities?
Officers being held accountable. This officer, I believe his name, Officer Fletcher, who killed, as we know, Stephen Taylor, should be held accountable for the wrong he committed, and that is the murder in Stephen Taylor. So I believe that when we hold officers accountable for failing to follow legislative laws that has been put in place, specifically AB 392, and failed to de-escalate when they could have de-escalated, or circumvented the ability just to use their weapon, would be, I'm telling you, would be tremendously important that this officer is held accountable for wrongfully using his weapon at a time when he shouldn't have used it, because Stephen Taylor showed no threat, nor was he showing any threat to the officer. He was stumbling from being tased, and the officer still shot him. This happens over and over and over throughout this state.
And that's what the DA agreed with. So we appreciate your time, Cephas' uncle Bobby X. Johnson. We think of you over the years, and we hope to speak to you again soon. Thanks so much for your time.
Oh, thank you.
All right, let's switch gears here and bring in Jeff Ranieri and talk about